come from Denmark originally, but I work in Sweden, in the south of Sweden. I'm affiliated with the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, in short SLU, and my main research area is farm animal perception and learning. So my main work within equitation science is, first of all, how horses learn and how horses do not learn, which is also a very important point, especially if you want to ensure the welfare of horses and that the training regimes are adapted to the cognitive abilities of horses. Secondly, my work on perceptual abilities is also quite important, because perception and how horses perceive the world is really important to understand why they behave in a certain way. And also, if we want to be able to predict, for instance, dangerous behavior, you have to know how the horse perceive the world. I mainly work with olfaction, which is a completely under-researched area, but it is very important because horses rely on olfactory information, and if we don't know about that information, we lose a lot of opportunities to do better for horses. The development in my most recent research is linked also to the the positive emotional balance for horses. And the reason for that is that olfaction as a sense is very closely linked with how emotions are processed in the neurobiology of animals in general, but also horses. So this means that we have a very direct way into the emotional interpretation of signals via olfactory input. So that is the main driver right now for my research. I think we need to I think the scientific world has, I'm not going to say an obligation, but I think we need to be better at communicating to different levels of stakeholders and in a broader perspective. And I think we need to make sure that whenever we do science, that we equip ourselves with a language that is transferable, makes our results transferable to the practical world, so that we actually make an impact at the end of a project. And that can be done in several ways, but one of them is these new emerging social media channels, and I think that's not a bad thing, because you can reach a lot of people using relatively simple means if you have the communication skills to convey your results. Better training practices, that is of course first of all to make the training better adapted for the horses, but there's also an aspect of ensuring that our training methods are efficient and safe for the humans involved. So understanding of horses' learning mechanisms and stress reactions and how sensitive they are to signals, it's first of all a matter of ensuring that it is safe to handle horses. Horses can be dangerous like any other large animal, and if we are better equipped to foresee or predict behavioral reactions, for instance a flight reaction, which can be quite violent, that will make the training regimes or the handling situations better for the humans involved. That also means, by lowering the chance of fear reactions, that horses are less fearful when we manage and stress them. So that will increase the welfare of the horses. And by knowing more of how we can train them in an efficient way, horses will also have an easier job understanding what we mean. Because we need to ask the right questions when we handle and train horses. We need to make sure that it is something, that the task we ask of them is something that they biologically can perform, and we need to make sure that we actually ask that of them, so that the task we have in mind is actually what we also ask, and not something completely different. I know for sure that the result that I made already during my master was the one that surprised the public the most, and also the scientific community. And that is the fact that horses, I'm not going to say that like in a blunt statement that they don't learn from watching each other, but we don't have the proof to say that they do.
No.
And that has been a surprise to many of my colleagues and many of my students, but also many of the people that I meet in the practical horse world, that horses you can't say for sure that if you have a horse in a field and it watches another horse, that the horse actually understands the actions of another horse and the end results of those actions. We can't say that. It's not backed up in science. And that has created a lot of debate, not just in the practical world, but also in the scientific world. And I think those debates are really interesting, because that's what moves science forward, when we disagree, as long as we stay open-minded to discussing it. I've worked with Andrew McLean a few times, and I really enjoy so Andrew McLean has a research background as well, but he has also a very keen practical horse equitation science eye. And what I like with working with him is that he always turns my very scientific perception of things into something that is practically relevant. And if not directly, then he has a good example from the horse world. So he has influenced me, or he has mentored me, I would say, a lot in my career. I think one important thing from my olfaction work is that since we don't know that much about horse olfaction, we can't say for sure how good of an olfactory sense horses have. But in order to be sure that we manage horses the best way, we need to assume that they are very sensitive. So that in order to ensure that we actually account for that sense, I think we need to make that assumption. And that means that you can handle horses in some situations where they will react perhaps in a way you didn't expect them to. And that can be caused from them perceiving an odor that we are not aware of, or we don't apply the same meaning to, or the same balance to. For instance, we don't know if horses can smell other horses' fear. There is some saying about that, but we don't know for sure. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is in relation to this emerging training regime called horse nose work, similar to the dog nose work. And I know there is a lot of books about this practical exercise out there. And one thing we need to bear in mind when we ask horses to follow a scent is that we cannot really assume horses to follow a scent that we can detect if we haven't tested it. So one of the studies we did a few years back was to test some of these odors that are usually mentioned as scents you can use for horse nose work, just to make sure that horses can actually detect these smells. Because what happens if you place a trail of a scent and the horses can't really detect the scent, then you're again asking the wrong task that the horse can't perform. So those two aspects are really important. And the cognition work, one thing that's important in the social transmission area is that horses they cannot learn or reproduce behavior from another horse, but they can learn to be more calm or less frightened by other horses. So this means that fear reactions are contagious, but the lowering of fear is also contagious. And this works in groups as well. So you can actually have a calm companion horse in a group of horses, and if there is a startling stimuli, like a flapping of a plastic bag or someone clapping in an arena, one calm horse can actually lower the fear reactions of the other naive horses. And that is very practically relevant. Positive welfare and positive emotion is sort of the buzzwords at the moment. And tackling what positive welfare means for horses and what a positive emotion is and how to measure it, I think that's going to be the next big thing, which is really not an easy task. I think that's going to be the next challenge for us, to try and uncover that. I come from a very heavy behavior and also neurobiology of behavior background, and that can be sort of niched, and to capture the nuances of discussions. for our research to stay relevant and updated, it's really important to have these like collaborative projects and collaborative discussions where someone can poke your darlings a little bit, and also sometimes kill your darlings, and you have to be prepared for that. I know I was very prepared to prove that horses could learn from watching each other when I ventured into my master thesis, which turned out in a completely other direction. So you have to be very open-minded and reflective.
Okay.
And I think having these discussions that are sort of across very broad or very different topics helps us do that. I have to say I don't consider myself as specializing in horses, first of all. I am a comparative scientist on large mammals within the farming sector. So I wouldn't say that I'm species specific in any way. I do, however, have a keen interest in horses on a personal level.
Yeah.
I come from a background in professional Icelandic horse riding.
Yeah.
So I came into science with a lot of darlings, actually, and a lot of perceived things that I thought about horses. And that's originally what brought me into the horse science. But I think very early in my career, I decided that I wanted to be comparative and to be able to compare different species, to say something about how the different, not even mammals, but ungulates, how they have evolved, and how we can know something about a horse that can be transferred to a cow and vice versa. Yeah. Because I think that, again, brings a better understanding of our farm animals and not just the horse. Yeah. There's two things that's sort of my main things that I hope everyone takes away from these courses. First of all, the critical eye when reading papers, especially when it comes to horses, because there is a lot of horse material out there, both the popular science articles and also the peer-reviewed articles, and there is a lot of cherry picking and publication biases and cultural things in equitation science. So I think if everybody leaves with a critical eye on what they read, that is really good. Yeah, and the other thing is if everybody leaves being a little bit self-reflective and ready to change your mind, because you might have right now I'm quite convinced that horses can't learn from each other, but I mean, I think the most important obligation for all of us is to be ready to be, convinced otherwise. And I would honestly be happy to. But yeah, we have to be ready for that discussion.